Hello. This video will provide an overview of the Run Info section in the new 3.5 OC ePCR run form. We will be toggling between the old run form and the new run form throughout the video to show what has been modified. The patient name, shown in the lower left-hand corner, is being used here to denote the new from the old. Starting in the Incident Info panel of the old run form, we have removed several elements. PCR number has been moved to the Data Detail panel because this element is auto-populated and is not relevant for field crews. Triage tag has been moved to the MCI group in the Scene Info panel. And vehicle unit number and call sign have been moved to the crew/unit info panel. All elements included in the Elite Field shift configuration will now land in that modified panel. It was crew info in the old run form. It will be crew/info unit in the new run form. Type of unit has also been moved to the crew/unit info panel, and its values have been modified to include level of unit, which has been removed from the 3.5 data standard. We will discuss those details later in the crew/unit info panel. Toggling over now to the new run form, we see that the elements we just reviewed are absent. There are several new elements that are now here. Unit dispatched has been added to allow for documentation without leaving the panel view. Type of service has also been added to this section. It used to live in the response info panel. NEMSIS added several new values to this element, splitting 911 response into 3 categories and providing several more options for IFT transports. Please review all of these new values. Moving down to the next element, be aware that the complaint reported by dispatch has added 4 new values: altered mental status, intercept, nausea, and vomiting. Next, there is a hidden element for EMD performed that will only show up when the type of service requested is 911 response to scene. EMD performed is a nationally required element, but can be left blank. The usage of required now means that the element must be present for field crews to document, but it may be left blank when not pertinent. If there are conditions under which the element must be documented, there will be a validation rule triggered. However, in this case, there are no validation rules for EMD performed in the current OCMEDS data dictionary. Next, we have unit en route date and time to allow for documentation without leaving the panel view. In the old system, you had to toggle back and forth into the Times tool in the upper right. While you can still use that tool and see and document times, you now have the option to maintain flow within the panel view. The response mode to scene values have changed in a manner integral to documentation and reporting. This element remains mandatory on all incidents. For all 911 responses, the response mode will be emergent. For non-911 responses, the response mode may be any of the 4 options, depending on the service request. Moving down, response mode descriptors has been added as a new element in the 3.5 standard, and this is where we will document code 2 versus code 3 and other new descriptors of scheduled or unscheduled. This element is mandatory on all incidents, and be careful not to fat finger anything here, as it is a multi-select field. Type of response delay has been added to this panel. In many cases, we are leaving elements in their original locations to allow for new and old workflows to function on the new form. Type of response delay is still in the response information panel, although we have relabeled that panel to scene info. We'll talk about that in a moment. Arrived on scene and first EMS unit on scene are added here to allow for inline documentation of the following elements that are determined after arrival on scene, such as first EMS unit arriving, first unit under 30 seconds, and other agencies on scene. These elements are further examples of elements that now live in multiple locations to provide for better documentation workflow. In the old form, you had to toggle back and forth between different panels. Now several elements will live in multiple locations to allow for more contiguous documentation. Next, the incident address panel has been moved up in the sort order from third to second. This allows you to click Next at the bottom of the incident info panel to move on with documentation. Incident location type and the free text incident facility or location name has been added to this panel to provide for better flow. These elements are still available on the next panel, Scene Info. In general, we tried to provide continuity from the old form while also improving the top to bottom flow of your documentation and minimizing the need to toggle back and forth to different areas of the form. Nothing else in incident address has been changed. Third is the Scene Info panel. The old Response Info label was modified to be more descriptive of the elements in this panel. Response delay is now the first element in this panel. Type of service requested was moved to the Incident Info panel, and Arrived on Scene has now been added. We still have our incident location type and incident location name, and now we also have the group of other EMS unit elements that we went over in the Incident Info panel before. Next, we have an element for transfer from agency. This element was added here because it has expanded usage in the 3.5 standard. In particular, it is linked to documentation in the disposition section, which we will cover later. Type of scene delay is also a new element added per NEMSIS requirement. This element is also in the disposition section, disposition detail panel, and is validated on all incidents with patient dispositions. It does have a value for none/no delay, which should be documented whenever pertinent. Now you will see all the MCI related fields in one place. And finally in this panel, transferring physician/referring MD has been added. This is the same field required in the 911/emergent IFT report and present in several other locations to document when applicable. The next panel we'll go to is crew/unit info. This was the crew info panel in our previous run form. We've added unit elements to allow for all components that are configured in Elite Field in your shift setup to come over into the run form into one panel location. Type of unit has been modified to include values indicating level of unit, and the separate element for level of unit has been removed from the 3.5 data standard. Please review these new values. Note that you may continue to see the old elements and old values for type of unit and level of unit in your shift setup in Elite Field during your transition. If the information is not properly carried over into your 3.5 run form, there will be validation rules alerting you to manually correct these elements. The Add Crew Member section is the same as the old system. However, the underlying values to crew member level have changed. While they may look the same, the underlying coding has dramatically changed. If you configure your shift setup in the old standard in Elite Field, but are using a 3.5 run form, as may happen with training or phased implementations, a validation rule will catch the error and crews will need to correct documentation within this area. The final element in this panel, crew member completing this report, will no longer be defaulted at the system level to the person logged into Elite Field. You may still control that setting at the agency level. This element is still validated and required, and the crew member elements will be duplicated in the signature panel for flow. Moving to the next panel, we have the dispatch detail. Various required dispatch-specific elements have been included. Usage of required means that the element must be present on the form and available for field crews to document, but it also means that the element may be left blank. There may also be conditions under which a real value must be entered. Those conditions are signified in OCMEDS as validation rules. The only validated element on this panel is dispatch reason, also known as complaint reported by dispatch, which is also on the incident info panel. Finally, we have the data detail panel. Various data-related elements have been included, all automated and read-only. These are all mandatory fields that must be present on the run form. However, they are also all auto-generated by the software platform and are read-only on the run form. And that concludes the overview of the Run Info section and its 6 component panels. Please let us know if you have any questions. Thank you.